So let's do this. The new King of Demacia Aftermath story. Aftermath. Not sure. Is this basically after this is definitely after the Sylas thing, but and I understand that Jarvan the Third died here somewhere. Didn't understand who killed him though. I think was it Sylas that killed him? We'll find out. Where's the cat, man? Never seen your cat.
Now and then, when Riot releases a story nobody expects, it blows people away. Usually, it's
pretty good stories.
An older champion, but today,
Amen.
It is a little bit special.
But can they please update Kassadin? Like, it's like, please. I mean, they updated him a bit, but like, can you get some love, some spotlight? Oh man.
Because we got an amazing story that is simply based on pushing the story forward.
Good.
In fact, the story you're about to hear is so good, I'm honestly left wanting more. I simply need to know what happens next. And I have never had this feeling before.
Good. I love the background music though, it's so good.
Sometimes we get a story that has a cool cliffhanger, but we have never had it on this level.
Aurelion Sol?
In order to even start with the new story that's called Aftermath, we need to quickly cover what happened in the latest issue of Lux. And because the story is quite long, we need to do it quickly. So here's the TLDR of issue 4 of Lux.
I so want to start watching the cinematics in the order they were released. Oh my god, man.
In this issue, Sylas was on his way to the Demacian Palace. He was looking for the king. As the mages started pouring into the throne room, Jarvan IV, the king's son, marched against them fully armored. He took down a couple of mages before he got to Sylas. And even though they were surrounded by Demacian guards, the two got engaged in one-on-one combat. And here's where we can find a couple of cool Easter eggs. Since Sylas has the ability to tap into the magic stored in Petricite, he can use all the magic that was ever used in the throne room. But the throne room stood ever since Gale and Morgana influenced the foundation of the map.
Wait a second. Oh, that is big. Wait, say that again?
But the throne room
No.
Easter eggs. Since Sylas has the ability to tap into the magic stored in Petricite.
Sylas has the ability to tap into magic stored in Petricite. Rise is hiding the rune stones, or whatever they're called, rune gems, whatever, under the trees that are absorbing that power. Does that mean Sylas will be able to use that power at some point? Oh my god, the story just got fucking catastrophic potentially. I feel like Sylas can be a massive raid boss if I can envision it, that Sylas becomes like a massive fucking raid boss who can just blow up the world with the power of the runestones because he can tap into them.
He can use all the magic that was ever used in the throne room.
Yeah.
But the throne room stood ever since Gale and Morgana influenced the foundation of Demacia. So we got a really cool scene where Sylas explains to Jarvan that ages ago, great beings stood where they stood now. And immediately after that, Sylas stepped into millennia-old magic. And from the chains it is obvious that Sylas is using the dark binding chains of Morgana.
The thing is, like with Sylas, he just straight he is always portrayed, even though his cause is good, he's always portrayed the villain, not because of what he's doing, but because of how he's doing certain things, or like his mentality. He just portrayed like he would be evil regardless of the circumstance, kind of thing. It's just that the circumstance is the excuse for him to be evil. That's kind of like what Sylas feels to me right now, right? Even though like what he's fighting for overall is good, I would say, where it's like you want equality for mages and stuff, but I feel like for him it's an excuse just to like fight. At least that's like the vibe I'm getting from him. Like he just has an like, I wouldn't say like complete evil vibe to this point of like, you know, Emperor what's his name? No, Palpatine. Right? He's not Palpatine, okay? But maybe Darth Vader-y, you know? Maybe a bit of Darth Vader. right? Where it's just like he's just using the excuse to be evil, even though he just wants to be evil.
Some speculate that in the scene before,
Ignorant swine!
flames of Gale. But that one might be a little bit of a stretch. The part with Morgana's magic is obvious, however, because
Yeah.
the tip and the links of the chain match perfectly. Also, Morgana's chains were used to bind people to the ground. Anyway, a scene later, Sylas captured Jarvan and he dragged him to the king's quarters. But when they arrived there, they found the king of Demacia dead. As of right now, we don't know what happened to him. We don't know how he died or who killed him. But what's important is that the king of Demacia is dead. Originally, Sylas wanted to humiliate the king in front of the capital city, to show everyone that mages hold the power now. But since the king was dead, they had to humiliate the prince.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Lux drank a patricide potion in order to dim her light, so that Sylas wouldn't be able to use her magic, and so nobody figures out that she's a mage. A scene later, it is revealed that the humiliation will take the form of Prince Jarvan eating a rat. It's what all the mage prisoners had to do in the prison. But before Jarvan was forced to do that, Lux interrupted them. First, she shot Sylas with a crossbow, then she got smacked onto the ground, and then she stabbed his foot with a knife. After that, the rebellion broke loose as Garen charged through the mages to help Lux. And with that, the issue ends, and the rest will be revealed in issue 5.
Interesting.
What was right now is that the king of Demacia died.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how, but it's important to know that he did. And this is where the new story Aftermath comes in. This story likely happens after the comic series ends, but slightly before the Turmoil story.
Wait, what? Presented by Marvel?
Likely happens after
Presented by Marvel. Number 1 of 5. Interesting.
the comic series ends, but slightly before the Turmoil story, since that one happens after the entire rebellion escalates. So, with that said,
Yes, it was an active civil war then.
The story begins with showing us Xinjiao after the battle, a day after the king died. Xinjiao was in deep depression, because his life was dedicated to him.
Yeah.
He sat in the royal gardens for hours, as the guards led him to grieve there alone. In his head, Xin didn't see anything but the fact that he failed to protect the king. When the first beams of sunrise finally warmed his face, he stood up. Many years ago he had made a promise. Now he intended to keep it. He went to the palace, looking for High Marshal Crownguard, but there he learned that she was away. She was overseeing increased security in the north. So Xinjiao marched north to find her. On his way, he watched banners hanging on the walls in the main hallway. One of the banners was in a bad condition, because it came from an important battle. A battle of Saltspike Hill, where King Jarvan himself fought, with Xinjiao at his side. It was a battle where, against the odds, they pushed back Freljordian barbarians. As Xinjiao kept going, he passed by a remote library where the king liked to hang out, away from all politics. This is where King Jarvan and Xinjiao had spent many nights drinking fortified honey wine. Next he passed by the training room. It was here where they let their passion loose. And it was here where they had spent most of their time, practicing with sword, spear and lance. Then the story revealed that although Xinjiao couldn't bear the fact
Spear and lance, huh?
best friend, Prince Jarvan lost his father, the only parent he had since his mother died when he was born.
Yeah.
Xin heard the sound of someone practicing within the training room, so he entered to see who that was. And sure enough, it was Prince Jarvan himself, hacking a wooden practice dummy into pieces, his eyes red, surrounded by dark sleepless pits. Xin wanted to leave immediately, but before he had the chance, Jarvan called after him. Even though they weren't related by blood.
This is like a day after the king died. That means that someone or something got Sylas out of the kingdom, right?
Jarvan called Xin uncle. Xinjiao lowered his head and apologized. There was a short pause before Jarvan questioned his apology. He wasn't sure if he apologized for interrupting him or not being there when his father was murdered. There was even a longer pause before Xin answered that he failed them both. After that, without a word, Jarvan threw him a training sword. Xin
Let's go.
caught it with his left hand, while still holding his spear in his right. A blink of an eye later, Jarvan was coming at him swinging hard. He was using a training blade, but the swings were strong enough to break a bone should they land. As they fought, Jarvan, engulfed in fury, questioned Xin. He asked Xin where he was, and Xin asked back in a quiet voice, was this how he wanted to do this? Jarvan simply said yes. his anger shimmering, his sword held in a death grip. Then Xin Zhao put away his spear and he let Jarvan go at him with his full force. Xin simply deflected Jarvan's strikes, but he never fought back, even though Jarvan's fury-driven strikes gave him plenty of opportunities.
Yeah.
Xin wouldn't
Let him
his justified anger.
let him exhaust himself. Let him take it all out, his anger all out and shit like that. Yeah.
And if the prince
Makes sense.
beat him bloody, then so be it. Jarvan attacked again and again, asking
Where were you?
asking Xin where was he. The story then briefly jumps into a scene from
I bet the king told Xin Zhao to go somewhere else. Like the king ordered him to do something else. I wonder, did the king kill himself?
the past. The king was writing a letter at his desk. He was angry at what they've done, and he was ventilating his thoughts to Xin Zhao. They've been fools. He was a fool. They tried to protect themselves, but they only created the very enemy they tried to protect themselves from.
Yep.
After that, the story goes back to the present times. Xin Zhao just blocked a heavy blow aimed at his neck. Jarvan asked him if he has nothing to say, and Xin replied that he should have been there with his father. But Jarvan snarled back at him. This was no answer. The prince then threw away his sword, and for a moment, Xin hoped he was done. But
Nope.
then Jarvan
He
retreated
took a real sword.
Drake
Ah,
He leveled the lance toward Xin and told him to get his spear. But Xin protested. Jarvan wasn't armored. A training weapon could break bones, but a simple parry of a combat blade could be lethal. But Jarvan didn't care, so Xin bowed his head and retrieved his spear. Without a word, Jarvan attacked. The story then continues the scene from the past. Xin Zhao didn't understand what the king was talking about, and so the king explained. He blamed himself. He gave them too much power despite him knowing it wasn't the right choice. But they had convincing arguments, and they were backed by the council.
yeah. That's kind of what I thought happened with he gave too much power to, like, I'm assuming not the nobles, but like the mage seekers, and that's what brought this.
Now he saw how wrong he was to ignore his own judgment.
Yeah.
That's why he was writing a letter, commanding the mage seekers to halt their arrest.
Yeah.
Then the story went back to the present scene again. With a flick of his hand, Jarvan doubled the length of Drakebane, and Xin Zhao deflected it, careful to not get his spear hooked. Drakebane was a very unique weapon, and the secrets of how to fight with it were lost in the reign of the first kings of Demacia. In fact, for centuries the weapon was mostly used for ceremonial purposes, because in untrained hands, Drakebane was deadly to its wielder as it was to the enemy. But Jarvan dreamed of using it in battle like the heroes of old, and so Xin promised to teach him how to use it when he was ready. But before he could teach Jarvan how to wield the weapon, Xin had to master it himself. It was a sublime weapon, and a symbol of greatness crafted by the legendary Orlon. The weapon was brought to defeat the great frost drake Maelstrom, who plagued the first settlements of Demacia in the early ages of the kingdom. For years, Xin Zhao practiced with the lance every day, and only when he felt like he understood it well, he started teaching Jarvan how to use it. But over the years, Jarvan got better at wielding Drakebane, better than even Xin Zhao, and Jarvan now used it to furiously strike at him, forcing him back with every swing. Xin successfully avoided every blow so far, but he knew that wouldn't last. At this point, it took all of Xin Zhao's focus to stay alive. The scene then cuts back to the past. The king was reading over the letter he just wrote. Then he said that had he had the courage to do this earlier, perhaps this day's disaster could have been averted. After that, he signed the letter, and he sealed it in a white leather case with royal blue wax. When the wax cooled down, he handed the letter to Xin Zhao.
Yeah.
Then the story goes back to the present. Xin Zhao barely avoided a vicious slash, turning his face at the last moment. The blades of Drakebane sliced across his cheek, drawing blood. It was at this moment that Xin Zhao wondered if the prince was actually trying to kill him. There was a certain balance in dying to the son of the man he failed to protect. Jarvan then slapped Xin Zhao's spear aside with the butt of Drakebane, and he sliced the weapon at Xin Zhao's neck. It was a perfectly executed move that Xin himself taught him. Xin Zhao could have blocked the following strike, but instead, he decided to rely on his speed in order to dodge it. And yet, at the very last moment, Xin Zhao didn't move. His will to fight was gone. He lifted his chin ever so slightly, so that the strike would be true. The blow was delivered with speed, skill, and power, but it stopped just as it touched Xin Zhao's throat. Jarvan then asked Xin, why won't he say where he was? to which Zin answered that it's because he is at fault. He should have been there. Jarvan held the weapon at his throat a moment longer, before all the fury suddenly disappeared. Jarvan knew his father probably sent Zin away.
Yep.
Now he's blaming himself for his absence. And when he questioned Zin about his suspicions, Zin didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Then it cuts back to the past. Xin Zhao hesitated for a moment, but then he accepted the letter. He asked if the king wants him to give it to a runner, but King Jarvan said that this delivery is very important, and that he only trusts Xin.
Yeah.
The letter was meant for the head of the Mage Seeker Order, directly for him and nobody else. Xin Zhao said that he would deliver the letter when the streets are clear and it is safe to leave, but the king ordered him to leave
I'm good now, yeah.
Then the story quickly shoots back to the present. Jarvan was shaking his head. He knew his father was stubborn, and once his mind was set, there was no use changing it. Xin Zhao simply repeated that he should have been there. Jarvan rubbed his eyes. He didn't agree with Xin. Staying would be defying the king's order. Jarvan then asked, what was it that the king had him doing? And the scene goes back to the past. Xin Zhao frowned. His place was by the king's side.
It's like it's the most cliche. It's a good cliche, but it's really one of my favorite cliche. But this is like the most cliche way of like kings knowing that they're gonna die. Either like they're gonna die by someone else, or they're gonna kill themselves, and they don't want their retainer basically to be there when they do, so they send them away. It's like super cliche and stuff, but like I love this. It's so nice. This also shows a good amount of character on the King of Demacia.
The chaos. But the king insisted that if they don't deliver the letter, things will get even worse. Already it had gone far enough, and they had to stop the Mage Seekers before this escalates. Again, Xin repeated that it is not wise to leave now, but the king interrupted him, urging him to leave immediately. Back in the present, after Xin Zhao explained what happened, Jarvan almost couldn't believe it. He let out a bitter laugh, since this was exactly what his father was like. Once the king missed Jarvan's blade ceremony on his 14th birthday, because of a meeting about taxation. He then asked Xin if he delivered the message, and Xin replied, no, he didn't. As soon as he heard the bells, he turned around, and on his way back, he had to deal with a number of mages, as was obvious from his battered clothes. Out of anger, Jarvan said that they should have executed them all, a statement that shocked Xin. He replied that his father wouldn't share the same view, but Jarvan snapped back. They killed him. After that, there was a moment of silence.
No, I think King killed himself, but yeah.
He didn't know what to do. In that moment, he was just a boy again, scared and alone. Xin Zhao dropped his spear and hugged him tightly. Jarvan cried then, and for the first time that day, tears ran down Xin Zhao's face as well.
Oh, man. Like, I get it. I get it, but it's like, imagine you, like, it's fine when it's like in a story, but it's like, imagine you walk in, right? You have like these two characters like fucking like the shit of the shit, mega alpha dudes, right? Or supposed to be. It's like you walk in, they're hugging and crying. You're like, what the fuck is going on? Even though it's understandable, don't get me wrong, but it's like just imagining that scene happening, knowing who these two are, you're like, bro. It's like they were better off just like punching bags and like, you know, but yeah, whatever.
After this heartbreaking moment, Jarvan changed his clothes to look more formal. Xin Zhao told him that he will now do what he was born to do. He will lead. Jarvan replied that he doesn't think he's ready. But Xin Zhao assured him that none of the good leaders think that.
Yeah.
And Jarvan added that at least Xin Zhao will be with him to help him. To which Xin responded that he regrets it will not be possible.
Yeah.
Then it cuts back to the past. Xin Zhao was still standing in the same room as the king. His place was by the king. The king reminded him that his duty is to Demacia, and Xin replied that the king is Demacia. The king then snapped back. Demacia is greater than any king. That was not up for debate. It was an order. At that point, Xin Zhao's inner sense of danger was going wild, but it was silenced by the devotion to duty. After that, he simply bowed and marched from the room. In the present, Xin Zhao told Jarvan that he had made a promise long time ago. A promise you may remember because it came from a story we already covered. Should anything happen to Jarvan III, Xin Zhao's own life was forfeit.
Yeah.
The pledge was made to High Marshal Taena Crown Guard, who would make sure of that. After a moment, Jarvan told Xin Zhao something that reminded Xin so much of the king. Jarvan said that his pledge was to Demacia, not his father, not anyone else. His duty to Demacia overrides all. And Jarvan assured him that he would deal with Taena himself. Right now, he needed Xin to serve him as he did his father. So he asked Xin to stand with the kingdom again. And Xin slowly dropped to his knee, accepting his new king. In the last scene, Jarvan and Xin Zhao walked towards the main council hall. Jarvan's new advisors already expected him inside, but he stopped before the great council doors. He asked Xin Zhao what happened to the letter he was supposed to deliver. Xin Zhao revealed that he still had it attached to his belt, and he let Jarvan read it. Xin Zhao saw Jarvan's expression harden. Then he crushed the letter in both hands before handing it back. "Destroy it," Jarvan said. Xin Zhao stared at him in shock, and without a further word, Jarvan turned and walked into the council room. He moved to the head of the table. To his right, there was High Marshal Taena Crown Guard. To his left, there was Taena's husband, the head of the Mage Seeker Order for whom the letter was. Xin Zhao still stood frozen in shock in the entrance, but when Jarvan raised his eyebrows at him questioningly, Xin Zhao marched into the room, and he threw the letter into the flames. The story then ends with Jarvan's words. Let us begin. This story was quite amazing because for the first time, I was left with a feeling of wanting more. The story just moved forward by an incredible chunk, but we know it's not the end.
What happened in between those 2 days though? That's what I'm more curious about.
Even the last issue of the Lux comic won't give us all the answers. Right now, I have a good theory about what actually happened to the king. So we'll wait for the last comic issue. And if we don't get the answers, oh boy, you can expect a spicy video.
Duty calls. I feel like he killed himself though. Or he asked one of his retainers to do it. Yeah. It's a pretty good video though. Yeah. The mass is like getting a better story. There was something here I want to so like this, for example. This part. Friends, I need you. Do we need more testimony from the swine? No. Does he deserve to be spared? No. String him. Wait, no. Long live Prince Jarvan. Execute him. Execute him, but then Demacia would fall to anarchy. Mages would run free in the streets. Bleed the swine. They can't do that. See, like he just wants pain. It's not like he doesn't want like justice or whatever. If he wants justice, he would just like abolish the monarchy or whatever, but he just wants, he's driven by revenge basically, right? He's becoming the enemy he hates, and I feel like he's going down a path where it's like he's just gonna be more and more and more and more evil, right? And eventually, because hopefully he doesn't get captured or killed. Probably won't be killed. I mean, it's like plot device, and because he can use the power of the Petricide, I believe he would have something to do with those trees, like because he can use their power or some shit like that. Well, yeah, like you become what you hunt, you become what you hate. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty cool. I do want to see how far the Sylas story goes. I don't know if Warriors. The one where Lux summons Galio. I wonder if that was the last piece of information we have about Sylas. But yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll keep going through this. We'll see what happens. But yeah. Oh, really? Did LeBlanc kill King Jarvan? Oh, that's interesting. Let's load this up, actually. Let's go. Fuck it. It's a continuation of the same story. I might as well. Anyways, on to the next one.